Hello and welcome to the 58th Radical Poetry Reading. I'm Malvika Jolly, Special Projects Associate here at The Rail, and today I have the pleasure and privilege of welcoming poet Danusha Laméris, who has lovingly curated a fantastic lineup of poets and readers today, featuring Nickole Brown, Jessica Jacobs, Keetje Kuipers, and Angela Narciso Torres. A few quick notes before we get started. We've started out all of our events here with two important acknowledgements. The first is that here in New York, we're on Lenapehoking, the unceded land and waters of the Wapinger, Canarsie, Munsee, and Lenni Lenape people of the Delaware Nation and the Shinnecock Indian Nation. The second is an acknowledgement that Black Lives Matter. I think it's worth taking a moment to remember that the heart of both acknowledgements is a commitment to the liberation of the oppressed and solidarity for all those who struggle for freedom, in recognition that when it comes to our liberation, our histories never unfold in isolation. In that spirit, I encourage you all to check out the chat, where in just a moment I'll drop a living document of resources and actions we've been compiling here at The Rail. But now it's my honor to welcome our wonderful host. Poet Danusha Laméris is the author of The Moons of August, which came out with Autumn House 2014, appropriate press and title. She's also the author of Bonfire Opera, which came out just last year with University of Pittsburgh Press and was the winner of the Northern California Book Award in Poetry. Her work has been published in the Best American Poetry, Orion, the New York Times, the American Poetry Review, Plowshares, Tin House, Prairie Schooner, and elsewhere. She's the recipient of the 2020 Lucille Clifton Legacy Award, and she co-leads the Poetry of Resilience webinars and was the 2018 to 2020 Poet Laureate of Santa Cruz County, California. She remains Poet Laureate of our hearts. And it's worth mentioning she's also on the faculty of Pacific University's low-res MFA program, here to dazzle us today. Danusha, take it away.
Hi, good morning and afternoon to everybody. And I'm just relishing seeing some of your faces. I want to scroll through and see everybody because it's just nice to be reunited. So hello to you all. I'm going to try not to be too distracted by trying to admire you. But thank you for joining us and being here in poetry together. In the ways that we can be in these days. I'm so grateful for these connections and how they transcend space and time in some ways. So thank you. And my thought, and I'm first of all, I want to say I'm so grateful to Brooklyn Rail for asking me to do this, and to Malvika for being just the most ridiculously sweet and organized person any of us poets on board have ever encountered. I think that's really safe to say. I hope I can speak for us in saying that. But my thought was to put together a group of women writers who are in some way writing about the natural world, writing about many other things as well, about love and relationship, about trees and hills, and who have a magical way of weaving all of that together. So that was the idea behind it. And I'm really excited to start us off first with Nicole Brown, a poet who I famously basically told that I loved before we ever met. So I'm just it was like I was inviting her to join me in a class I was teaching and said, I'm asking you because I just want to work with people that I love. and then I realized we'd never actually met each other. But I chalked that up to the magic of poems. And there was a way in which I really felt Nicole's fierce and beautiful and strong heart through her work and wanted to connect with that. And so I stand by that initial proclamation. I'm doubling down, actually. I'm just doubling down. So I'm just so excited to get to share space with her today. And I'm going to be sharing each poet's most recent book, and Nicole's is The Donkey Elegies, a love poem to the unexpected and the underpraised, something that Nickole is so good at, drawing our eye to exactly where it needs to go and where we might not have gone without her guidance. So please join me in welcoming Nicole Brown.
Thank you, Danusha. And if you're going to double down on anything, you can double down on love, and I will double it right back to you. And Malvika, if I ever have an opportunity to hire you for any poetry organization, you are just absolutely phenomenal to work with. Thank you so much. And Nick, thank you for pulling this together as well. I've been thinking a lot on these past few days about what I want to read, and I'm going to go back in time a little bit to my my first chapbook called "To Those Who Were Our First Gods," and there's a number of reasons I'd like to do this, primarily because I was reading an article that just came out in the New York Times that said that COVID is actually sweeping its way through the deer population, and how problematic that is. And people are already talking about a massive cull. And there's so many things I find so very worrisome about this time. I have, for the past 6 years, have dedicated myself to writing and researching animals. This morning, I was out at a farm sanctuary and got home just in time to get the goat poop out of my hair for this reading. But what I would like to do is read a poem called "Mercy," and it's just one poem. It's long, but you'll see at the end of the poem there's a call and response that I'm hoping for. And I know we're not in the same room. If we were, I would pretend like I was Freddie Mercury and ask you guys to come on and sing along with me. But because we can't, when we get to the end, when I ask you to say a word, if you could put it in the chat and maybe we could all sort of rise up together. I oftentimes think of poetry as a chorus, as a way for all of these voices to rise up. So this is called "Mercy." Speak, beast, speak. Curled suburban cuddle in front of the fireplace. Possum dreaming and paw kicking. Your fur a tumbleweed down the waxed hallway. Your ears cropped and your tail docked. Speak. Or how about you? Yes, you, spotted neck stretched towards what's left of your acacia trees. Neck as long as a man's grave is deep. I need you to fire that impossible distance between your heart and tongue and speak. Speak, you barred owls with the pink tip of a poisoned mouse dangling from your beak. All your many neck bones hinged in one spot so you can pivot your blinking face to me. I am watching. I am waiting. Look at me and speak. Speak, you black snake drowsing on the hot blacktop. Your forked tongue remembering the long kiss of voles in tall grass. A memory gone when the woman runs over you, then twice again, just to be sure. I need you to speak. Speak, you jittering squirrels, you murder of crows, you quarrel of sparrows, you pitying of turtle doves, you everyday outside flick of life at the mercy of these coming winds, these rising waters filthy and licking with flames. Speak, sing to me, call and fuss among what brittle branches left. I have opened my windows. I am listening. Speak. Speak, you hellbender, giant salamander, you are a rarity now put on educational display. You eel-looking haint once pulled up by fishermen in these mountains. Speak, because no one knows who you are anymore. You must make us remember. Turn your slack maul to my tapping on the bent plexiglass and speak. Say what it is you need to say. Oh, and you with your thick skull blown apart with a high caliber swagger, your memory long and your once trumpeting gone, speak to me from beyond. Tell me what it was to have those ears of yours in fury, raised like giant gray flags, how hard you fought, and even once shot, how you just stood there, confused, already dead, but refusing to fall until your knees buckled, the rest of you slumps, and the great pillars of your tusks were chainsawed from your face. I need to hear especially from you. I have a photo here of a man grinning with your lopped off tail in his fist. I need you to speak, damn it. Speak. Say what it is you need to say. Or how about you, kin but safe in a cage? I've heard your placid chewing at the zoo. You took a sweet potato from my hand with the wet, breathing end of your trunk, slid it into the deep socket of your mouth. I know that sound. I smiled at your keeper, fed you another treat, but now I need for you to speak. Try it. Swallow down that food and flex your tongue. Push out the grassy air from those miraculous lungs. I am waiting. We are all waiting. I am begging. Please, beast, speak. We are running out of time. There are so many of us, and what's left of you are swaying in pins, rocking from side to side, sleeping and aching and craving and thinking. I know you are thinking, but not saying a damn word. No, not one, which is all we need. I swear, all of you. You birds and cicadas, all you flying, leaping, vine-grabbing canopy beings, all you furred and quilled things too, or you chittering in your burrows and hiding in the dark, step from the mouth of your dens and speak. Listen to me. You belong here. You with a mouth full of milk, with dirt under your claws, all of you rooting and panting and hibernating and ruminating and standing by the fence, watching us speed past in our cars. Listen to me. I need you to try. Try to say just one word. We can start slow with the low pleasure sound, the delicious that closes the door to home. Then growl out that middle vowel, and what comes after, let the back of your throat issue forth a warning and mean it. Get angry with me because you've had enough. Because if you don't find these sounds, there will be nothing left. Now, you're almost there. Pull back your lips if you have them. Show your teeth if you have them. Hiss. Let out all the air, whatever air is left, and in doing so, take us back to all our beginnings with the sound of waves, with that final syllable, see. Now, try again. Try again. Try. Please try. All at once. It's such a small world, a small word on which your lives depend. I'll do anything. Please, beast, speak. Say it with me now. Mercy, 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 mercy. Now, try again. Repeat after me.
That was so beautiful. Thank you so much, Nicole. I was sitting there going, is she going to do another one? I was just sort of lost in the stream of it, waiting for the next thing. So forgive my pause. But that was just so beautiful. This, while you're reading, a part of me was thinking, this is why we do this. This is why we do this, to come to church. So thank you for bringing us here. Beautiful. Gathering myself. So part of the package of connecting with Nicole and prematurely professing my love was also getting to meet Nicole. So, and in person over brunch, and through that, getting to meet her wife and fellow poet, Jessica Jacobs. And what an absolute treat. Just the way that life in poetry helps open us to people we didn't know that we needed. And that has been my experience with both of these women. And I knew as we fell into a conversation that seemed to have begun eons ago, that I was with poetry family. And I don't know how this happens, but it did. And there was something about Jessica's chutzpah and just spirit of adventure that seemed to form a kind of guiding light, I felt, and one that I wanted to follow. And I see it in the poems as I was reading Jessica's most recent book called Take Me With You Wherever You're Going. What a great title. I felt again that spirit of journey, of going places, of seeking, with an earthy attentiveness and humor that shines through her work, along with that fierce and relentless seeking for a sense of home through place, through connection, and ultimately through love. And I invite you to savor her work. Thank you, Jessica, for being here this afternoon.
Oh, Danusha, thank you so much. It was such a joy to meet you and to spend that morning with you and to continue the conversation we've clearly been having for at least 50 years. And I'm so delighted to continue it today and to be here in such beautiful company and hear all of your poems. And thank you to Malvika and Nick and Brooklyn Rail. It's an honor. So I'm going to be reading to you from an unpublished manuscript that entirely responds to the book of Genesis. And this is something that I've been so grateful for during the pandemic, because reading this text, arguing with this text, has brought me to places I don't think I would have had the courage or fortitude to go on my own. And one of those places with the story of Noah and the flood was the first thing I thought of, Danusha, when you said you wanted us to talk about nature. And it made me think, of course, about the climate crisis and who among us is wealthy enough to build the ark that will save them, and who is going to be left behind. And the thing that you need to know is that the Hebrew word teva, which means ark, also means word. So ark and word. Collective nouns. When Noah was still just a man, and not yet sailor and savior. God said, make yourself a word, for I have decided to silence all flesh. Scraping muscle from a hide, his wife crouched nearby, listening. Without argument or question, without a single signal of warning to neighbors or friends, her husband, that little wind-up toy, God's docile errand boy, complied. He built the word to spec, big enough to hold two of every creature, but too small for her mother, too small for her brother, no matter how she begged. From planks of gopher wood smeared with pitch, Noah built the word and God shut them up in it. Water crushed down from the sky, fountained from the seas, dissolving living dust and breath to reefs of hushed mud. And he, a silenced man in a wooden word, drifting the silenced world. With an otter placid as a stole across his shoulders, instead of talking, he lived in his hands, picking nits, troughing food and water, always more water, tending to every walking, creeping, winged thing, to all beings but her. Never lying beside her, never tasting the taste of sleep, his tongue withered to a husk. The dark hold was mobbed with chitter, roar, and screech without refrain, and from outside, the ceaseless babble of wood and rain. She was drowning in languages she couldn't speak, and he never offered her a word of comfort. When the rains finally ended, Noah bound a rope to the rafters. Before the raven, before the doves, he lowered himself from the word's one window. A splash, and he leashed the rope to his ankle, leaned back and let his hands fall empty, let the flood embrace him. Grime sloughed from him into the waves until the only animal he smelled was himself. Noah bobbed there, a beaming buoy, tethered to the word in which the future floated, where his wife, unseen, the new Eve, humanity's unnamed mother, looked out from the window and watched him give himself to the killing waters, looked past him, trying not to think of the death and rot that brothed him. Is a man good, she wondered, who can construct a word large enough for only a chosen few? And now, regardless of any covenant that once rainbowed the sky, before the world is again silenced, the water and weather already rising, what noun collective, what peaceful fleet lashed by syntax and spring lines into a sentence of survival? What new words can we build to save us all? Going in a very, very different direction. This poem begins with a quote from my darling wife. She gave me permission to use it, I swear. And I've been waiting to use it in a poem for about 8 years. So I'm delighted that the story of the first time that Rebecca and Isaac met gave me a chance to use it. At first sight, many seeings later. Lifting my chin, my wife said, "When you look at my breast like that, you make my face feel lonely." So this was new marriage on a Wednesday morning. When Rebecca saw Isaac the first time, he was striding the noon field. A man at full sunlight, he cast no shadow. From her camel, most translators spin nafal into alighted, allowing her some dignity. The truth is, it means she fell. In a cloud of desert dust, she was a smitten, resplendent heap, lanterning up at her future mate. The truth is, in the beginning, your face was too much for me. The force of my desire matched. Now, years on, we have matching slippers, and each night on the couch between us, the dog snores. How little we look at what we think we know. Less seeing than simply noting, yes, still there. Yet if the past of love is longing, the future grief, at least for one of us, then let the present praise the little brown job of the familiar. Let me fall from my camel again and again. Let me gaze up and see anew the apexed angles of your collarbones. Let me learn them with my tongue. This bird flown into the sweet sheet of your skin, wings in upstroke, your chest, my love, etched forever with this exaltation of flight. It was still okay, right? Okay, I'm getting nods that it was still okay. And this this last poem, like the poem before, I think what I found as someone who finds real comfort in nature and who needs to be outside every day, that is the place where I also go to find the images and metaphors that help me understand even the most difficult circumstances. And so this was written after a trip to visit my parents down in Florida. How long before? To move in the wet heat of Florida summer is to be carried in the mouth of an animal. But inside my parents' house, kept chill as a mausoleum, my mother paces and weeps in a ragged nightgown she refuses to change. Her hands, two anxious dishcloths, trying to wring themselves dry. Because I am not the person I'd like to be, I shut the door on this, on my father's poor job of pretending not to cry. And between fences draped in air potato vines, beetle-eaten to a path of tattered valentines, I run as though I could leave any of this behind. As Joseph tried to when he named his first son Manasseh, he who makes forgetting, a word that hints at memory evaporating like water from a sizzling street. That heat hungry as the silverfish swimming my childhood books, leaving holes in all the old stories. But to name someone after what you say you've forgotten is to make of them a neon arrow to the relentless past, one you'll someday return to. This is not that. The mother I've lost is lost for good. The only cure for such decay is its completion. When she's forgotten, even forgetting. In the mountains, I've made my home, vine barrens of kudzu, invasive as her illness, mask every gall, burl, and blight. So come, high climber, you foot a night vine. May all her buried memories remain for her unmarked, unnamed. Cover it all with your nullifying green. Be a sea that waves over everything. And if it brings her peace, let her forget even me. Thank you.
Wow, so beautiful, Jessica. And clearly, it is a wise thing for two poets, fine poets, to marry each other and change the entire oxygen in their house. There was something going on there. It is just remarkable. So thank you both. And thank you, Jessica, for that was so moving. Yeah, just receiving it. Wow, I want to curate poetry readings all the time because then I get to just bring in poets that I really need to hear. So thank you all for saying yes to doing this. And it's really an honor and a privilege to get to be here receiving the work. The next poet I have the privilege of introducing is Keetje Kuipers, and we have not met, though there is that magic of the written word and the way in which when you love someone's work and you love their book, you feel a fondness and affection for them, you know, for the poet themselves, for the world that they offer you. And I love when that happens. And that has happened to me over the years, reading the work of Keetje Kuipers. I think our interactions have included discussing our Dutchness through emails. With Keetje's family being from an American town of Dutch immigrants and my father being from Holland. So we were bonding over Dutchness, which, you know, frankly doesn't happen that often for me. So I just want to acknowledge that. And sorry. And I want to talk about her most recent book, All Its Charms, which is full of intimacy. That was the word that kept coming to me. Poems that live deeply in the body, our bodies, in the world, a body growing inside a body. So many levels and layers of incarnation in these poems, explored deeply in a way that allowed me as a reader to just delve into the primary and the primal and unlocking secrets along the way. So please join me in welcoming Keetje Kuipers.
Thank you so much, Danusha. I am joining you guys up from the University of Montana campus on the land of the Salish and Kootenai peoples. I think next door some graduate students are having a party, so I apologize if there's the sound of ecstatic graduate students in the office next door. I am so excited to be here with these fabulous poets. I feel connected to all of them in different ways, but one of the ways in which I'm connected to almost all of them is through my work at Poetry Northwest. I've had Danusha in the magazine, and Jessica will be in the magazine, and Angela's been in the magazine, and Nicole, I don't think you've been in the magazine, but I'm gonna get you. So anyways, that is one of the wonderful ways that I'm connected to these women who I admire so much. But I'm so touched by what Danusha said about my last book, but I made a social media promise, which I think is probably the most binding of all promises known to man right now, that I would read only brand new work that I've never read for anybody else before. So I'm gonna read these poems. Y'all are truly the first. Spa days. I drive through the yellow rib cage of maples, arching the road, past the butch woman I want to be, raking leaves in her front yard, hair slicked back at the sides. Yesterday, searching the internet for winter tights, I found crotchless ones, a model's diffident fingertips barely obscuring the hairless glow of her pussy, and remembered the years I spent lying on a table in a quiet room, piped sound of harps descending from the ceiling, while some other woman carefully made my body as smooth and unthreatening as a child's. I didn't hate those days or the men I then took to bed, though I was always trying to fuck my way towards the woman I believed was hidden inside each one of them. I knew it would require a deep dive, a sinking past waves and midnight zones. How strange to discover then what I've become through that slow, fruitless searching. The water itself, every dark, glitterless bit of it, like the back of a rhinestone, flat, matte surface where you put the glue. And the music, all these years later, still ringing in my ears from that distance above me. So I've been thinking a lot lately about wildness in poems and discomfort in poems. I think, part of it is what I'm reading for the magazine. I want to be made uncomfortable. I want always to be surprised. But I've been thinking of, and I was talking about this the other day, Malvika heard me talk about this, but I was thinking about poems having rumble strips in them. Like I used to write my poems and try to like polish them smooth and make them the shiniest, most perfect, kind of sphere that they could be. And there's tremendous pleasure for the poet in that kind of craft work. But I think that so much gets lost then in making a perfect thing, and I'm really not interested in the perfect poem anymore. I'm interested in the poem that has those rumble strips in it, where you have to slow down and get jolted a bit. So that's something I'm trying to do in these new poems. I didn't know what I didn't know. Rumor was she blew him after geometry, out behind the baseball diamond, a kind of place it confused me to learn existed. Not beautiful, homely is maybe what you would have called my best friend. Her parents' house was filled with leaves and the smell of vegetables, and I spent more hours stretched across the rug of her attic room than I did in my own bed. Did I ask her about him then? Our bodies parallel on the floor as we examined the seam of her ceiling, her straw-like hair quivering with the tick that twisted her face when nervous or even happy, its flutter just at the edge of what I could see without turning my head. I don't remember. All I know is that she never told me. I didn't understand shame or silence then. Those days, my luck was a short rope holding me always too close to myself. Who cut it is another story, or the same one, depending on if you ask. I did want to be mindful, though, of Danusha's request for poems that exist in a natural place and that engage with the natural world. So this last poem, also brand new, but does that. Washing my daughter's clothes. Out the laundry room window, a swan dips its head into lake water, still murky from last year's snow. Surfaces, silt roping its neck. Some yellow flutter, I don't know its name or even what it's called. And then a turkey, so close, I almost miss the fat, dark shadow of its awkward passing. My mother's grandmother, uncomplaining, I've heard, but sad, hanged herself in the one plumbed back room of her house, having made it just as long as I have on this earth. Something else I don't know much about. She waited a while until her girls were grown. She didn't leave a note. Women in my family are like the bears I haven't seen yet this season. You can't foresee their comings or their goings. Thank you.
Damn, those rumble strips. Thank you so much for that, and for that term, and for the permission that comes with it. Beautiful poems. And thank you for reading the new ones to us. That's always exciting, isn't it? To get to hear a poet's new poems hot off the grill. So deep appreciation. Thank you, Keetje. And I get to introduce our fourth poet of I want to say evening, but this is weird doing these things in the mornings. Never used to really happen for me, but here we are in the morning-ish. Angela Narciso Torres, who I also had the privilege of meeting virtually online this year, and who opens up one of the other gifts of this life in writing poetry, which is that I meet people who tell me things that I need to know again and again, day after day. And I don't know what other kind of work allows that so readily. And I think about Angela saying in a space that we shared together, quoting her uncle, "If you look for kindness, you will find kindness." And the way in which there's a level of trust that I learned from being in her presence, a way of being in the world, a way of being in the world. And I also have been thrilled to encounter her strong and beautiful voice through her poems, her most recent book being What Happens Is Neither, a meditation on music, food, family, and loss, how to reassemble the fragments of oneself. The answer pointing towards, as the title implies, a multiplicity of possibilities. What happens is neither. Please join me in welcoming Angela Narciso Torres.
Oh, Danusha, thank you so much. Thank you for your generosity and your heart and for bringing our voices together. Excuse me, I have a little tickle in my throat. Thank you, Keetje, Jessica, Nicole, for your luminous presence and your gift of words. Your poetry sustains and nourishes me. Thank you, Malvika, for organizing us so impeccably, as you all already have heard. Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Brooklyn Rail, for this wonderful space that's bringing us all together in poetry. I'll read two from the new book and end with some new work. Our theme is nature, and while I wouldn't consider myself a nature poet primarily, nature does figure largely in my poems more as a means to an end. In a sense, I think we're all nature poets. We use what we have at our disposal, observing, paying close attention to the natural world to reflect our inner landscape. And as Jess mentioned so beautifully earlier, nature helps us understand some of the most difficult, inexpressible experiences life throws at us. This book is both an homage and an elegy to my parents, whom I lost 2 years ago, 2 weeks apart from each other. My mother to Alzheimer's and my father to cancer and a broken heart. I'll start with one of my earlier poems in the book, which I wrote when my mom was first diagnosed. Excuse me, I need to let the dog in. She's at the door. Come here, Phoebe. Yes, my loves have a way of interrupting me. What I learned this week. No more fireflies in northern Indiana. The fish in Lake Erie are dying out because they're ingesting plastic microbeads used in exfoliants. Yellow X's mark trees on our street that workers will axe next week. Ash borers are eating them alive so they cannot absorb water or light. This week I learned my mother is losing dexterity in both hands. But when I play Bach's Ave Maria on the piano, she lifts her head, motions me to move her wheelchair closer. She leans over the keyboard to try the melody, finding the notes each time. Her fingers can barely strike the keys, but I hear them. Some say music memory is the last to go. Still, I have no windfalls for the empty baskets of my mother's eyes. When I returned from Manila, the peonies I'd left in half blossom were stunted by spring storms. A bud that will not bloom is called a bullet. This is the title poem from the book. What happens is neither the end nor the beginning, yet we're wired to look for signs. Consider the peonies. One makes a perfect bud after months of nothing. Another's leaves are ringed with black rot. How can I not think end? How can I not say beginning? Leaves fall when days shorten because the tree must reduce to its tough parts, twig, branch, bark. My mother sleeps away the daylight. She nods off while chewing a spoonful of fish and rice, her head a peony gone to seed. Father calls to say she doesn't recognize him. Turning to him, she cried out, certain a stranger was in her bed. He played his violin till she slept, a leaf in late fall curling into itself. In autumn, chlorophyll disappears, canceling green from leaves so yellow and magenta can blaze. In my mirror, I see her, the smile that favors a cheek, eyes slanting in the shape of small fish we eat for breakfast. Trees know now, trees know best the now of things. What goes on has been going on for centuries. Washing dishes, I rest a foot on my standing leg. A fork clangs on the tile. I rinse a cracked cup. I try not to think of endings. So I guess I was inspired by Keetje to read something new today that I've never read before. On October 20, I was tested positive for a breakthrough case of COVID-19, despite vaccinations, masks, all of that. Thankfully, it was a mild case, and with medical help and with my supportive family, I was able to recover at home in self-isolation. A friend and I started exchanging poems, which we wrote for each of the day of my isolation. We wrote in the Japanese tanka form, which is 5 lines following the syllabic count of 57577. I live in northern San Diego, and our backyard faces a canyon, and I never examined that view from my window as closely as I did these past couple weeks writing these poems. The canyon, the hawk, the fog, the birds, the trees. Nature is truly a healer, and share some of this series with you in about 8 or 9 short parts. For now, I'm calling it the Self-Isolation Notebook. Day 1. Only the moon came over the hills, a good nurse in sensible shoes. My breath caught in the branches of my ribs. Day 3. One day I could end my sentences. The next, I could not. Today, the gray dove struts on the fence, unfolds a note to the wind. Day 6. You miss the daily things you can't do, held by doors or days, little things, pruning roses, salting a stew, how the mailbox creaked open. Day 9. On the 9th day, rain. The hawk on the tower tucks beak to chest, almond speck in the storm's milky froth, a seed scheming its rebirth. Day 11. What the silence said. Look, the crepe myrtle turned gold while you slept. And look, a new clan of wrens chitters behind the broken fountain. Day 13. Sleeping with windows flung to stars, coyote cries. One could do much worse. The leaves are no longer green. They do not question the fall. Day 14. The fog unpeels from the hills, a blankness withdrawn, as if God inhaled. How the body ebbs and flows. All breath returns to the sea. Day 15. I survey my days as the hawk circles the plains. Small mammals scurry for cover. The cactus flowers, pink upturned faces, dreaming. Day 15. Woke to the chatter of unnameable ghost birds. The studious husband emptying the dishwasher. Black coffee drips faithfully. And this is the last, day 18. That's today. The fog sidled up to me this morning, like an old friend, swallowing canyon, crabgrass, mountains, years. Remember me? It whispered. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much, Angela. I was just lost in those poems, and I so appreciate you taking us through the journey that you've been on these past weeks. So intimate to get to be there with you. Really feeling that. Thank you so much. Wow, and now I read poems. That's what happens. That seems so weird.
Well, how about this? Now we're so lucky to hand the space back to she who opened it and convened us all here, the wonderful Danusha Laméris, who's at the heart of all of these entanglements and connecting us all in the Zoom. Danusha, take it away.
All right. Thank you so much, Malvika. And thank you again for your sweet and organized presence that we are also in awe of. So thank you for helping bring us into this space. And I never know exactly what I'm going to read. I write a messy note card that looks like this to myself. I can't even read it. And then I just go forth. So that's how this is going to be. But I like to start with a kind of invocation. I have right now a short poem I wrote that helps me enter the space of poetry somehow. And it's called The Heart Is Not. It's 8 lines. The heart is not a pocket, a thing that can be turned inside out by anybody's hand. Not a place for pebbles or loose change, not to carry old receipts. It does not tear at the seam. It doesn't have a seam. It cannot be torn. That was, I wrote that for the New York Public Library because they ask poets to write pocket poems. And I thought, oh, well, I'll write one about a pocket. So that's how that was born. And this next is called Lava. And I wrote it because I kept hearing stories of people who were in a setting in nature and they would see something very dangerous and be unable to move away from it. And I kept reading these stories and they were piling up in my mind, including my neighbor who saw a mountain lion on our bridge. And she said, I couldn't do the things you're supposed to do. It was too beautiful. So she just stayed there staring at it and it all worked out, luckily. Lava. Once 2 women hiked a volcano, stood on the lip and watched the fire move in the crater's mouth. Neither spoke. Not even when the ground began to shake and they felt the rumble through their souls and up their legs. They just stood there, eyes fixed. Later, both admitted the truth. Each fought an urge to leap. What is it we could give our lives for? A mountain, a fire, a view from the cliff. Every year on the coast where I live, tourists die amazed by the Monterey Bay, swept from the shelf of rock overlooking the waves. And farther north, some people try to get so close to grizzly bears, they end up taking their stories with them into the darkness of the animal itself, surrendering to its life of fur and forage, to lumber through the woods at night, becoming, at last, a gorgeous, insatiable beast. who's seen Grizzly Man? I mean, that's the right. Getting so close to the grizzly bears, just wanting to get so close to them. So that's sort of, that documentary is kind of hidden in that poem as well. What do I want to read? I want to read these things. I'll think about it. Okay. This poem came from a conversation I was having with my friend, the poet Dorian Lux, where I said a line and then she said, okay, you have to write a poem with that line. I mean, I didn't say a line, I just was saying something in conversation. And she said, you have to write a poem with that line. And then I will take the line and use it as an epigraph and write a poem. It's very complicated, but it was like wheeling and dealing. And so this is the result of that. But somehow, Jessica talking about the ark made me think of ancient things and boats, and I don't know, brought up this poem. Everything is old. Everything is old. The sea with its ancient lament, the birds left over from dinosaurs, their pterodactyl bones, rocks, their long molten histories and imprints of ancient fish. The trees ringed with years of lean, years of plenty. Who needs to name the elephants with their wizened eyes and swinging gait, the sadness that glazes their leathery hides? The sun is older than we want to think, already past midlife, its years of fusion finite. Old, the song that lifts between two bodies in the dark. Old, the rain, the snow, the fox hiding in its den. Old, the long hours awake in the middle of the night. Old, the moon. Old, the sound of awe we make, watching it rise full over the trees. The vowels we cry are old, once pictographs on papyrus. The language is old, dying even as we write it down. Who will decipher our sorrow? Who will know our joy? Though these two are old and unlikely to alter, why not take an old chipped cup, fill it with water, or for that matter, the fermented leaves of something aged, a little bruised, ripened in a cave? Why not take a sip and sit a while in silence, its weighted grace, the oldest thing of all? So maybe one more.
Danusha,
Looking
we
at-
have a request from the audience.
We have a request.
Yeah, you're now a radio station. Catherine Petruccelli has asked for leg, please.
Okay, I can do that. Hi, Kitty, wherever you are in there. Oh my God, it's actually marked. Can you believe this? This hot mess is my next manuscript, and it's not ordered or anything, but it has all these tabs that help me think I know what I'm doing. And I'm happy to read leg. I live here in a barn. You can see a little bit of it behind me. It's that little roof line. That's a barn shape, and on a few acres, and we're always finding dead things. I thought living in nature was sort of this, it turns out you're just constantly stepping on possum skulls. That's the reality of it. And the like. So this poem is a little bit longer. I'm going to take a sip. All right. Leg. We're walking around the field by my house, Dion and I, her dog pulling at the leash, collecting, no doubt, an array of ticks in her bristly white fur. When we come upon the half-eaten leg of a deer, gnawed clean along the thigh bone, the calf still covered in its thin scrim of flesh and tawny fur, the dark hoof, a fatted arrow pointing uphill toward where we imagine the rest of the deer might lie. A doe, I'm thinking, deep in a grove of eucalyptus, carried off in the jaws of a mountain lion. Dion pokes at the bone, says, Don't you want to keep it? Look at that hoof. The dog rolls around in the nearby grass, basking in the afterdeath, wanting to carry a whiff of it, like a fine cologne. We keep circling the field, coming upon fresh remains, the russet feathers of a hen fanned out, the plasticky stems still wadded together, past coyote scat, then back to the leg. I turn to Dion, say, I think it's yours. Take it. She's had some parts replaced, at least one hip. I'm hobbling a little on my bad ankle, even on a good day. We're both fair game. I look down the hill at the rusted tractor, fruit fallen from the apple trees, haloed by a buzz of wasps. We walk further up the slope over thistles and clumps of dandelion, lean down to the stippled earth and revel in its decadent decay. It's hot. The dog digs at a gopher hole 100 miles away. My sister-in-law is growing a small bouquet of errant cells in her left lung, others on her spine, her rib. No one else has her exact rasp of voice. Her hands, their stacked gold rings, her freezer full of turkey broth, her wonky, bunioned big toe, her long black hair, her life, the one she kept on living after my brother died, catching babies, cutting the rubbery cord, wiping the bloody vernix from their brows. I think of how I've come to call her sister, dropping the suffix. We've known each other since she was 3 and I was 6. And I don't know what a sister is, if not an other, a fragile mirror, space of tenderness, female and mortal and afraid. I watch as Dion takes a stick and digs around in the same hole as the dog, who's now sniffing the loose dirt, sisters, I think, of the two of them, the woman and the dog, happily engaged in their unburying. And somehow walking in silence back the way we came. Sisters, I think, of the two of us, me and Dion, rounding the path down the hill back home. And when I eye again the doe's skinned leg lying in the loam, I think for a moment, sister, of the scrap that's left. But it's only later, lying awake in the dark, that I picture the tawny shadow skimming the hillside, hidden by a clump of trees. Sister, I think, of the lion that ate her. Thank you. Thank you. Can we all take off our little, do we get to talk to each other now?
Yes, let's do it. I'm going to change the security settings. Everyone behave. You can turn on your mics. What a beautiful reading. What a
Oh,
phenomenal
So
group.
beautiful.
So lovely.
Oh my
gosh.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Danusha.
Yes, amazing. Thank you.
It's beautiful. So beautiful.
Oh,
I'd love to pass the mic perhaps to Keetje Kuipers,
Great.
if we can get her. Keetje, hi.
Okay.
Can I ask
Hi.
why? Tell us what you love about leg.
What I love about leg, oh gosh. I feel a bit on the spot here. I love the journey. I love never knowing where it's turning and that it keeps turning. And just, I feel like the detail in it is so excruciating, if I can use that word. Like, it's just so, there's such precision there. And I guess I just ride those visuals, through that whole story, and the stories within the story. So anyway, thanks for reading it, Dee.
Thanks, Kitty, for asking for that. It's fun to get to see some familiar faces here. And I know we are not having a formal Q&A, but if anybody just wants to chat poetry, or if you see friends of yours amongst the poets here, it's a time that we just get to connect a little bit too. Oh, I can look at the chat messages. Okay, Judy Carr.
Let's see. I appreciate we have someone who's just boarding a flight but tuned in.
Oh my
To hear
gosh.
us as they were boarding. It's so fun to imagine.
That's an honor. We get to get on a flight with them. That's very sweet.
It's very special.
It's very special.
Well, does anyone? Oh, go right ahead.
I was going to say, any stories from the poets too about your connections with each other? I know I talked a little bit about how I'm connected to each of you, but if there's stories you have too, I'd love to hear that.
We've had the joy of working with Angela at the Palm Beach Poetry Festival the last few years, before she abandoned Florida for greener pastures. But it's such a delight that every year we get to hear whatever you're working on, Angela. And yeah, it's been nice.
Yes, it's been such a joy knowing both of you through the Palm Beach Poetry Fest. And January is now my favorite month of the year because I get to see you on Zoom at least, and hopefully one day in South Florida again.
Yeah. I'm so curious, as you were recovering from COVID, what was it like to at least dedicate yourself to a small poem every day? Do you think did it change the process for you? It must have, just putting aside energy just for those words every day.
It actually was unlike any other poetry I'd ever written, in that it really, I was running to my desk. I couldn't run because I was breathless, but every morning I looked forward to just penning something. It sustained me truly. And my friend Lucia, who's here in the audience, and who I also met at the Palm Beach Poetry Festival in South Florida, we would write to each other every day. These were like little postcards, and we were commenting on how there were so many connections in our work and how it almost flowed effortlessly. I don't know if it was the form or the illness or boredom or the quiet, but yeah, it was just like medicine for me.
Wow.
I loved listening to them. I really did. And I've dealt with medical things in my life where I went silent for a really long period of time. And as you were reading, I sort of made a promise to myself, if I deal with anything serious again, that I will at least promise myself to write a few lines every day.
Yeah, the small form really helps. Just 5 lines. I mean, anyone can write 5 lines, and it usually takes about 15 minutes. And then you can just keep tweaking it throughout the day and fixing little things here and there. Yeah, and committing to just that form with the syllabic count. I love this quote from Henri Cole, that poetry is like a genie in a bottle. The bottle makes the genie stronger.
That's great.
That's incredible. I feel like that also takes us back to something you said, Danusha. You introduced one of your poems and you said, this is a poem that helps me get into the space of poetry. And that's what that kind of constraint, like the bottle that makes the genie stronger, kind of feels like the thing that gets you into the writing, the key that unlocks the poetry. And I think a simple question for everyone to have is, what is the key that unlocks the poetry? What is the poem that helps you get into the space of poetry for each of you? I'm really, I'd love to start with Keetje, because I know you must have a very particular one.
So
thought so much about Rumblestrip.
I was talking to a student this morning, actually, and he was telling me he'd brought a poem into workshop, and in our workshop here, we have a bunch of different styles of workshopping, and the students each pick which style they want. And he had picked for his poem this style called Family Reunion, where basically your poem gets brutalized and no one says anything nice about it, and you're just supposed to like go in, right? So he asked for that. So, I mean, these are very kind, generous people in this workshop. So, you know, they brutalized it, but they, you know, they were nice in their brutality, I guess. But he came to my office hours this morning just before this reading and wanted to talk about it and wanted to talk about what I had said about it, which was that it felt like a performance of being a poem rather than actually being a poem. And that's something that I feel intimately familiar with in my own writing. And I went through a period of time where I felt like I couldn't write the poems that were easy for me to write. Like if it came too quickly, if it came too easily, if it felt too much like myself, I'd be like, oh, another Keetje poem. Like, what is this shit? You know, like I got to push myself. I have to, you know, I have to step beyond what's easy for me to do. And what I realized was that I wasn't actually challenging myself in my writing when I tried to write like somebody else. That wasn't the challenge that was missing. And that those poems ended up, being performances that really, the challenge was, again, like discovering discomfort, even if the poem comes easily and feels like myself, where do I locate the danger inside of it? And I gave my student this example. Like I haven't written a poem now in like a couple of weeks, and because that's how I work. I don't write every day. And last night I was at home and I had just finished a glass of bourbon with a friend on the front steps, and he'd left and my kids were inside watching a nature show. And I was like, oh, we had just finished the bourbon. The kids were inside watching a nature show. And I was like, oh, that's a poem. Like, that's how I write poems. Like what's happening begins the poem. And then I was like, oh, it's one of those nature poems, or it's one of those nature shows where like everything is already dead. You know, they're like, oh, look at the beautiful coral reef, which is dead now, humans. It was one of those like, look at the rainforest, which is only this big now, humans. And so I was like, okay, we had just finished the bourbon. The children were inside watching one of those nature shows where everything was already dead. And I was like, now what happens? And I was like, well, I know how it ends. It ends with the question, what else can we resurrect? What else can we bring back from the dead? And I was like, oh, this poem's about my marriage. Okay, great. All right, good. I'm in. And that's how I work. And he was asking me like, how much do you think about like the project that you're working on right now and what you're writing towards, and how much do you let that influence the poem? And I was like, the poem is going to always take me back to the project, because the project is just what I'm obsessed with right now. It's what's in my heart. It's what's in my head. Like, I don't need to worry about writing towards the project, but I do need to worry about writing towards what feels dangerous and what feels authentic. So for me, it's the intersection of those things.
I love that question. Where do I locate the danger inside of it? I wrote that down because like I've been collecting this list of questions that poets ask of their poems. Mm-hmm. Like Michael Cleaver Diggs, he said, is it true? Mm-hmm. Just kind of collecting these different questions. And I love that one. Where do I locate the danger inside of it? It's really good.
Thanks. That's brilliant. And I at risk of keeping us going a minute or two too long, I'm kind of curious, like Angela, where would you locate the danger in your poem, in your series of poems? Or is that a question we can open up to the group?
For me, it's always writing from it's simple and complicated in that I write from just whatever means the most to me at the moment and not turning away from that. And I guess I'm lucky in that I'm the kind of person who wears my heart on my sleeve, even in my writing, at the risk of sounding too earnest or too sincere. And I know that's not an in thing in poetry to be, but I'm calling it the new sincerity because I feel like we're going back to that, and we need it. We need it, and we need to touch those deepest undercurrents that make us all human and that connect us in this time of disconnection. And so that's where I've always gone, and that's where I'll keep going.
I love that. My friend Erica Meitner, the poet Erica Meitner. I was recently talking to her about the poems I'm writing right now, and she said, bold and unapologetic is the new pastoral. And I agree. So same thing, new sincerity. Yes. Yes.
I love that. I love that. We're having questions too in the chat about whether those longer poems by Nicole and Jessica are already out in the world.
Yes, so the one I read was first published by a Norwegian journal. It's a Norwegian climate change project, and you can find it online with some audio. And it's popped up in a few anthologies since, but that would be the easiest place to find it.
The Noah poem that I read is going to be in Ecotone, I think sometime this year. And the poem that I quote Nicole is going to be in the Vita review. I think the next one. And the last one, I just wrote it, so it's out in the world. But thank you for asking.
Awesome.
And Angela, I don't know if you saw in the chat, but we will completely join the New Sincerity movement. We talk all the time how much we yearn for emotional risk in a poem. You know, even if it you know might be a dangerous thing to do, even if it might knock the poem off balance a little, but just to have the courage to say what it is that you're carrying with you. So important.
And to find your way to vulnerability through culpability as well in a poem.
I like that. I like that. And you both have ways of doing that in your poems, so different from each other, yet you just go right to the aorta there, and it never feels, because it's so nuanced, it's not just one channel. I think the danger of sentimentality is the danger of only speaking through one channel, but there's nuance in your voices that's so palpable, and it makes your voices so authentic and real that it's okay to go there. It doesn't feel sentimental, it just feels real.
I've never heard it described that way with the one channel thing.
Yeah, that's beautiful.
I love that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I mean, I felt that way that each of you did that in a different way, and I love like Keetje. I can believe like, okay, so this happened, and now what is this saying? And then Danusha, I felt like the same way. You know, that you're wandering around, and then each thing kind of leads to a new truth. And Angela, you're doing that so beautifully in both the older poems and then the new observations. Like I think that what I also want, along with sincerity, is to welcome the world into our poems, because I think that's how we know what we have to save, and we know the value of it.
It's a big part of the rumble strip.
Yeah.
Wake up. I'm going to be using that a lot, and that's so well said.
I definitely had the experience once where I really cleaned up a poem of mine after I'd submitted it. I got feedback on it, I cleaned it up, and I got a note from the editor accepting the poem. But I said, hey, but I have this new cleaner version, you know, and he's a really good editor. And he was like, I don't want that. I want the exploded version. I want to see the beams. I'm not interested in what you did. And I was like, got it. And I really learned so much from that. And I try to tell students too, like, yeah, we're attending to craft, but attend to your wildness and what you feel is your ugliness and all of that just as much, and let it in. It's sort of like this 50-50. Half of it is just like the letting it out. And then it's like, oh, how are my line breaks?
Yeah.
So it's a weird combo.
It's happening all the time with me. I'm at Poetry Northwest. I'm having so many people whose work I accept, and then they say, oh, thank you. I've actually worked on it and, you know, and cleaned it up and tightened it. And I'm like, oh, no. You know, I give it a look, but no. Like, stay fearless. Stay in the fearless place, right?
This is so great. Isn't it great hearing that from an editor? I hope that people are feeling that way who are writers in the room. It's like, no, raw edges, and
Yeah.
all.
Mhm.
Thank you, Keetje, for saying that and for talking about that when you read your new poems. Because I do, as an editor, I do tend to over edit even my own work, and I need to trust the raw edges, as you showed so beautifully in what you read today.
I just want you guys to understand what it's like to be married to somebody who said, will you read my poem? And I spent a few hours with it. And I'm like, I've got some notes. And then she'll say, oh, that was 4 drafts ago. I have another one for you right here.
Sometimes I'm revising toward wildness. Thank you very much.
But we talk a lot because we both are, we revise and revise and revise and revise. But, you know, as my grandmother used to say, like, you tease your hair to Jesus, but then sometimes you tease it so high it falls flat.
Mm.
So, you know, you gotta.
I've never had that experience, but I hear you.
Love
Wait,
it.
this is mind-blowingly incredible. We traditionally close out poetry just communally together, but today I have a special request from a special guest. Our publisher and artistic director Fang H. Bui would like to ask a question of you all and say a few words. And Fang, take it away.
Thank you, Danusha. Thank you, Nicole, Jessica, Angela, Katie. I was in and out with meetings, but I did manage to hear several things, of course, all beautifully read. I appreciate the location of whatever the danger that lie inside the intersection to each one of us, and right in the image. That's another phrase that was brought up. Right in the image, it's very Blackian, and the notion of sincerity and authenticity. You probably remember that was a subject of the Charles Eliot Norton book of lecture of Lionel Trilling, 1972 or 3. Amazing. It's a very beautiful argument about how sincerity is being the honesty of mind, free from hypocrisy, simulation, and faulty tense and everything else in between. But it was a central aspect of moral life before the turn of the century, where sincerity replaced it. It's different. It's one being more truthfully the ladder of commitment, intention. But we, you know, poetry is so important right now. It's always been. I grew up with poetry, and this whole series has been proven to be such an important arsenal against the destructive abusiveness of demagogy people. The first thing they want to do is take out the intellectual, the poet, the writers. And certainly it will be a relentless attack to poetry, because the most important, honest voice, really, that lie between being sincere and being authentic, as we've been talking about. And that's the fearlessness that we can do, is to bring the greater warmth and share of such community as this forum here. I'm very grateful because we're able to bring warmth to this cold technological form with this Zoom. But it's not at all cold. It's warmth. It's filled with such an amazing, brilliant vulnerability and beauty of your poetry, your poem, your work, your being, really. And that's where we need to share a greater degree, because why not take advantage of technology and amplify warmth and beauty? And above all, it's very important to younger generation to know, need not fear. They have to embrace the condition of uncertainty, which we all know what kids told us time to time. We be reminded the negative capability. They should not be fearful. So thank you, Angela, for being putting your heart in your sleeves. I do it every day too, you know? So I'm grateful to you all. Poetry is the most important aspect of the rail to restore the dignity, the subtlety, the complexity of language that's been reduced to 2 words, 3 words by our previous president. I'm sure more be coming, but we are ready. We are ready to do what we do. So thank you so much. I can't wait to re-listen to this. And remember, be in touch. We're going to do more. Our series will be forever growing. We're going to spread out using this very forum to bring to the Middle East, Far East, everywhere in the world. And that's our ambition. It's just a way to mobilize love and the adoration we have for language. For all of you who are committed to that discipline, we at the Rail are forever grateful. So yes, I had to go to another meeting, but I send my love and admiration for now, and we'll be in touch super soon, okay, you guys? Grazie mille. Ciao. Back to you, Malvika.
Thank you so much, Phong. I don't feel like closing out the Zoom, but I know everyone has places to go and things to teach and plans. But I'd love to call our attention really quickly to one comment in the chat from Juanita Smart, who broadcast the reading in her English class that she was teaching, which I thought we were really everywhere in the world today, weren't we? She said, I can't wait to hear their impressions and responses on Friday. She listened with her students and I think assigned a bit of homework. She said, thank you so much for showing them what you can do when you love language and traffic in words, which I thought was so beautifully put. Anyway, thank you all so much. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Jessica. Thank you,
Thank
Keetje,
you.
Angela.
And thank you for
you
being
all.
here, Juanita. She's in my writing about animals class. So I'm so excited.
Wow, that's
See
amazing.
that chain of and I have to say I absolutely love what Phong said as well.
Yes.
What an amazing voice. Like I just love that. So to mobilize with love, is that what he said?
To mobilize love.
Mobilize love. Yeah. And
I hope
Danusha,
he's still here to hear all the praise. He is really into the warmth of the Zoom room, which I
You know,
think
it can
we
be pretty cozy in the Zoom room. I'm
Yeah.
seeing Tina Posner, one of my advisees. Hi, Tina.
Hi, Tina.
Out in Austin, so we don't get to just hang out. So yeah, it's really sweet.
This is
we
really,
have a
really
friend
nice.
here from Israel who's tuning in. Noel, nice to see you. And yeah, lovely.
Nancy is here.
Yeah, and Magosia, and yeah, it's so lovely.
Oh.
Hi.
Danusha, thank you.
Hi.
It was such a joy just to, I don't know, to sing with this chorus was amazing.
I loved it so much. Like I don't want it to ever end. I'm really grateful to all of you. Thank you for doing this. Thank you so much.
Can I just share one tiny thing? I'm so impressed we have we have so many people still in the Zoom an hour and a half later. But I usually take down like a couple notes. But today our
goodness.
notes are what is the word for a type of poem that is a poem of other people's lines?
Acento. Yeah.
This is our acento.
Wow.
Just like so much happened today.
That's
Will you
amazing.
send us that? Will you send us
Of
our
course.
sentence?
Please send us those.
Yeah, of course.
Okay.
All right. So as always, thank you all who've been here in the audience, in the chat, in our hearts, in the program. Danusha, thank you for bringing us together so beautifully.
Yes.
As always, we'll share the recording of today's reading on our YouTube archives, so it will be available in a day or two. If ever you wish to revisit this magical space, I know I will. And we do this every day here at The Rail, so please join me again tomorrow at 2 p.m. Eastern for an extra special conversation with union organizer Eric Foreman in conversation with Rail editor-at-large Donna Scopper. We'll close with a poetry reading by our very own Phong H. Bowie. And that will be at 2 p.m. Eastern right here in the Zoom. Other than that, thank you all so much. You should be able to turn on your microphones if you'd like to say, hello to one another, goodbye on your way out, or anything else that compels you. But thank you so much. This has been so, so special.
Thank you all so much. Today has been
Thank you
incredible.
all so much.
Thank you.
So beautiful.
Thank you,
It's been
Danusha.
so touching.
Thank you,
powerful.
Nicole.
Thank you
Thank you,
so much.
Jessica. Thank you, Angela.
Thank you
Thank you,
all.
Keetje.
Thank you, Danusha. Thank you so much.
It's such a treat and treasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.
Take
Bye,
care.
everyone.
And
Congrats.
congrats.
Thank you for joining us.
Thanks,
I
everyone.
feel like we have to close the Zoom so we can have a new one some other day. We can have a part 2.
Malvika, can we have a photo with all the readers and with you and Danusha?
Like a screenshot I'll take right
Yeah.
now? Sure. I'm going to turn my sound off.
Just need
Thank
a
you,
memory
everyone.
today. Incredible. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Today was so amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Courage.
Thank you.
Love and courage, all.
Bye.
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 Thank you
Take care.
again.
Be safe.
The expanding heads. I always love how our heads get bigger. It's really
The
funny.
top is blowing off of mine with all the poetry we heard today.
I know. I feel super inspired.
Me too. Me too. Thank you all so much.
Yeah.
That was really, really.
And I'm very sad that you got sick, Angela, but I'm very grateful for those poems.
Thank you for saying so. I actually miss being in isolation. It was like the perfect writing retreat. You don't have to cook. Have them cook for me every day. Incredible. That was miraculous, really. So yeah, it's like I kind of miss it.
breathing during your next retreat, that would be good. So yeah.
Yes, that's true. Breathing would be nice.
I'm just so glad you're okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Nicole.
Likewise. Thank you all so much. I feel terrible. It's like I don't want to be the first one to hang up, but
thank you, Nick. We understand.
Yeah.
today was truly amazing. So really thank you all for joining.
Thank you so much. And we have to go because we're both teaching a generative session tonight. I'm going as a snow leopard, so I've got lots of makeup to do.
Oh, fun.
It will be a sloth. It's all about writing from the perspective of animals. And
You guys are gonna do dress up?
Oh yeah, we invited everyone to have a reprise of their Halloween costume.
Oh, that's great.
So fun. Oh my God.
If you're if you want to hang out,
if you need more Zoom in your life. So.
That was incredibly fun.
Thank you all so much.
Have fun.
Thank you.
Best of luck,
Bye.
everyone. Take
No,
care.
but thanks again, and I'll hope to see you sometime soon. Bye.
Find more ways. Yeah, to do more
Yes.
things.
Thank you, Danusha. You're amazing.
Oh.
Take care. Lots of love.